Share some chapters of life that it laughs about a little bit and tell you a little bit about my twin and what it's like to both have one and lose one. So this is The Twins by Henry S. Lay. In form and feature, face and limb, I grew so like my brother that folks got taking me for him and each for one another. It puzzled all our kith and kin. It reached a fearful pitch. For one of us was born a twin, yet not a soul knew which. One day, to make the matters worse, before our names were fixed, as we were being washed by nurse, we got completely mixed. And thus you see, by fate's decree, or rather nurse's will, my brother John got christened me, and I got christened him. This fatal likeness even dogged my footsteps when at school, and I was always getting flogged, for John turned out a fool. I put this question fruitlessly to everyone I knew. What would you do if you were me to prove that you were you? Our close resemblance turned the tide of my domestic life, for somehow my intended bride became my brother's wife. In fact, year after year, these same absurd mistakes went on, and when I died, the neighbors came and buried Brother John. People have often asked me what it's like to have an identical twin, and it's kind of hard to explain. It's not like I had a whole lot of time before he was born to know what changed, But I've given some thought to it, and I'll return to this idea later. Having an identical twin is kind of like having two arms and two hands. They work together, they play together, they get into trouble together. And when Mom asks who left an open jar of mayonnaise on the counter, they both did because they were always together. One held the jar while the other twisted the top. They're a set, a pair of twins. We did not have the urban legends of feeling each other's pain or anything like that, but we were close, very close. Growing up, we went to the same churches and schools, and for most of the time, we were in the same classes. We even shared some of the same jobs. Unless we were sick and going to the doctor, we never went anywhere without the other one. I was actually in college before I was invited to an event without my twin also being invited. He was like an automatic +1 everywhere I went. In essence, we very much shared the same life. And that was actually just as strong of an influence on us as our shared DNA. It builds a bond that's stronger than just about any other relationship type that there is. This ability to even think like the other one, because of this close bond, is something that we sometimes took advantage of. When we were toddlers, we had our own language, and my parents said we could read each other's minds. My dad would actually take one of us up the street and give us a crayon to put in our pocket, bring us back home, and the other would tell my mom what color crayon it was. Kind of freaked her out. That level of bond was ultimately discouraged by my parents, but we had a lot of fun in other ways. As early as elementary school, folks would both remember us and be confused by us. Everyone knew the twins. My parents could tell us apart, but most folks could not. But there were times, even in high school, that David and I would change clothes in the bathroom and switch seats in class just to mess with the teacher. We never took tests for the other one or did homework for the other one, but we did our share of confusing folks around us. And the funniest times were when it was unplanned. I'll give a couple of funny examples of that. When David and I were seniors in high school, he had neck surgery. They shaved the back of his neck and up an inch or two up into his hairline for the procedure. I spent the night after surgery with him in the hospital. The next morning, he went to the bathroom and, of course, closed the door. I moved from the uncomfortable chair that I had spent the night in and stretched out on the bed. There was a knock at a door, and a guy in a white coat came in and asked how I was doing this morning. I said, I'm doing pretty good considering I didn't get much sleep last night. He said, well, can I get a look at your neck? At this point, I realized it was David's surgeon. I said, sure. I wish I had eyes in the back of my head when he looked at the neck that he had operated on the day before, and it was completely healed, no scar, and the hair grown back. David, who'd been silently listening behind the bathroom door, stepped out and told this confused doctor that he was looking at the wrong neck. About a week later, this really cute girl and her date walked up to me in the mall and said, "Hi, David." I acted totally confused and said, "I'm not David." She thought I was joking and told her guy friend that I'd been one of her patients the week before and had a real sense of humor. I insinuated she was just flirting with good-looking guys in the bar, or in the mall, not the bar, you don't know. Her date was getting a real kick at all of this. She grabbed me by the arm and spun me around so she could show her friend that she wasn't crazy and that I'd actually had surgery on my neck. She even ran her finger up the hair on the back of my neck in disbelief. At this point, after physically handling this total stranger in the mall, and sure that she was right, I turned around and told her that she must be friends with my twin. Her boyfriend and I died laughing. She didn't think it was as funny as we did though. But sometimes we would do things on purpose to confuse or prank folks. One of my favorite times was when we were in the middle of his wedding rehearsal, when he was getting married to Cheryl. I was his best man, of course. We were all up on the stage. And we were at the point in the ceremony where vows were to be exchanged, and the bride and groom were to hold each other's hands with both of their own to exchange the vows. But Cheryl asked, "What am I supposed to do with this bouquet of flowers that I carried up the aisle?" And the pastor told her, "Well, just turn and give it to your maid of honor." So as she acted this out and turned to give it to the maid of honor, I impulsively tagged on David's elbow. We didn't even have to exchange words. We immediately switched places. She turned back from the bridesmaid, looking at the pastor. He says, "Now, hold each other's hands." So she looked down, she grabbed both of my hands. The pastor did a really good job of keeping a straight face because he'd seen us switch, but she hadn't. Poor Cheryl, I don't think she got a wink of sleep for the next 24 hours after the pastor said, "And now you look into each other's eyes and say your vows." And she turned and looked me in the face and immediately realized she was holding both hands of the wrong guy and about to practice vows with him. That was 40 years ago, and I still smile thinking about that. Having this close bond, one that is literally lifelong until one departs in death, it's an amazing gift. And it's an incredible loss. It hit me harder than even when either of my parents died. In a way, it's like losing half of me. A part of me seems gone. There's a hole, and I expect I'll always feel that. But David was more than someone who loved to laugh and participate in a good practical joke. David had a strong faith and a deep relationship with God. He gave his life to Christ as his teen, and he was an ordained deacon and youth pastor for many years. And many of our deep conversations over the years were about theology. I don't know if many of you knew this, but he was actually working on a book entitled "The Bible Doesn't Say That." And he would send me chapters of it, and I would edit it and correct his theology. No, but we would discuss things that people believed were in the Bible that aren't actually what it says and that kind of stuff. But he did this not because he was religious, but because of his relationship with his Savior. As strong as my relationship was with my brother, Jesus was known as a friend of sinners. The book of Proverbs referred to him as a friend that sticks closer than a brother, even a twin brother. As much as there's a hole in me, something missing with David's absence, it's a much smaller hole because I know he's in a better place with a restored body and is seeing his Savior face to face. He's rejoicing. He's walking without pain and doesn't need to worry about his diet or diabetes. And we can rejoice for him because of that. We have an eternal hope due to our relationship as Christians with God. So I would be remiss in not offering an opportunity for you to consider your relationship with Christ. This is more than believing that he's real. It's a believe in or put your faith in relationship, not a believe that kind of distinction. It's truly a relationship. If you don't have that relationship, there's a God-sized hole in your heart. And the pastors and the family here would love to talk to you about how God can fill that for you. Nothing would be a better tribute to David and make him happier to know that you attended his funeral to honor him, and it resulted in you developing a relationship with our Creator and seeing David again in eternity. Honor David's life by considering who he lived for. It was a priority for him, and I know it would be his priority for you. There's no better celebration of his life than to embrace what was important to him. When David and I were teens, one of our favorite long play albums was a recording of a concert by Robbie Heiner from Liberty Baptist College, well before it became a huge university. And one of our favorite songs on that album was one called Finally Home. We wore that section of the album out. 40 years ago, Cheryl promised to sing this at my funeral. I'm still holding you to that. Don't worry, I won't be singing it. There's a reason why I spent decades on the other end of the microphone back at the sound booth. But I do want to close with the final verse and chorus of this song. When surrounded by the blackness of the darkest night, oh, how lonely death can be. At the end of this long tunnel is a shining light, for death is swallowed up in victory. But just think of stepping on shore and finding it heaven, of touching a hand and finding it God's, of breathing new air and finding it celestial, of waking up in glory and finding your home. David is home, and he can't wait to welcome you there.